And that should be now streaming. Hopefully. Maybe? Yes, there we go. Okay, welcome guys back to another episode of Full Power Pelk, and tonight we're doing a bit of a live stream with something that's actually quite interesting, which is a water elevator using Sculk sensors. So let's test this out and see what it's like. So what we have here is basically just a very basic sort of treehouse. It's nothing too flash, but what we have here is actually quite more interesting. So this is a water elevator that I've designed using the Sculk sensors. I'll do a bit more of a broken down version in a moment, but as you can see, this works extremely well. The design I'm using today should actually work in both versions of Minecraft, so both Bedrock and Java. But have a look at this. This is just something fun to play with. It's definitely crazy. I mean, you don't have to press any sort of buttons or anything like that, and you can just walk up to it. This is something really cool. I couldn't have ever imagined that you'd get something like this in Minecraft, where you could just walk up to it, do nothing about it, and it just works. That's all. I mean, that sort of starts to take away. When you really think about it, there is some problems with Redstone. You see, Redstone is kind of has some issues as far as the amount of time that you go into building stuff versus its actual real-world practicality. A lot of stuff that we actually make is probably not the most practical when you think about it. But this is something definitely a lot more useful when you think about it. So what we'll do is in a moment we'll go over and have a bit of a look at this design, but I'm just having fun playing with this. This is crazy. I can't believe that it was this simple to actually make. And as you can see, if I have a look around the treehouse, it's kind of hidden a bit. I've got this sort of stone plinth sort of going on here. You'll see why I've got that there in a sec. I've tried to sort of fit it into everything. If I go to nighttime mode, you'll sort of see that there's, okay, it doesn't show up as well in Java, but in RTX it would show up with a bit more sort of specular light and things like that, which would look kind of a little bit more cooler, but yeah, it doesn't have as good a light glow, but I think that that's not too bad. I think that that can sort of fit into a lot of builds without too much issue. Yeah, I think that that shouldn't be too bad whatsoever. Hopefully, I'll just mention this as well. Hopefully there's good audio with this, of course I can't type anything. Yes, hopefully there's good audio with this stream. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of people watching at the moment, so the audio may be terrible or the video may be terrible. I'm not really too sure. I think it's okay. I've done some testing, but let's go have a look at how this all actually works and how complicated it is. Because you're not going to actually believe how simple this device is. This is strangely simple. So I believe, there it is, over here. So there's two different designs that I've sort of made to sort of suit two different applications. So let's have a look at the first one, which just sort of fits into a wall section, which is pretty much the same as what we had over there, albeit slightly different. And this is it. This is how simple it actually is. So the one at the top is the easiest to explain probably first of all. So what we're doing is, you've probably seen this, if you are a big fan of Mango, he does this sort of stuff where he'll use a wall to actually run a redstone signal all the way down to an observer here. Yeah, you got to put the observer at the bottom. I had a previous video actually where I was actually trying this out in Bedrock. You got to actually put the observer underneath looking upwards. So that was my own fault, but as you can see, all that will happen is that the Sculk sensor activates the piston, moves the block actually changes all this to have a bit of a sort of like a notch. Hey, heads up to notch. So yeah, if I chuck in a block here, you can see that there's, of course, because I placed a block, yep. You can see that basically that's what the wall normally looks like, and that's what it looks like with a notch sort of attached to it. So if I Yes, they're very sensitive. So basically from there, once that changes the wall, all that will happen is a redstone signal goes along to this piston, and it just basically pushes along, obviously, your soul sand or your magma cube. So the return down here, even more simple. All that we have is basically a redstone line going to the piston, and we also have our Sculk sensor. Now, we have to use this little bit of carpet here. Well, not carpet, wool, sorry. The reason for that is that if we don't have wool here, this Sculk sensor actually gets activated by this piston every single time it goes off. So what will happen is that this one pushes it over, this one immediately pushes it back. It's not very good. So what we've got here is one that actually prevents the Sculk sensor from picking up on this piston, because it's sort of, yeah, it's kind of in line with it. It's kind of hard with these sort of wool blocks and things like that of how it all sort of works, because it's kind of not perfectly straight, but it kind of makes sense. It's not the worst thing in the world. I think as far as it working goes, it's probably what I would expect for Minecraft to sort of be like, because you can't really have a block halfway in between two blocks. So with that, that's basically it. That's the downstairs signal, and as you can see, if I walk around, it just basically activates that whenever I'm nearby, and it just basically pushes that over, and it's very quick. It's already switched over. Well, no, it hasn't switched over yet. And yeah, you can basically just play with it as much as you want. You're not going to double activate it or anything like that. I was thinking about doing a block swapping sort of system. The only problem with that being is that with the block swappers, first of all, Bedrock and Java, you use different block swapping. But aside from that, it would kind of be the problem where you could accidentally activate it partway through and all this sort of nonsense. So it's probably best to have it a bit more sort of simple like that. Now, the next thing to cover is not everyone builds their water elevators right next to a wall. There's some people in our community that build massive bases where they'll have water streams right in the middle of their base. Yeah, looking at you, Hermitcraft guys. Thanks for making my life more difficult with this tutorial. So basically over here we have something that is kind of meant to represent a base that kind of has a water stream right in the middle. And as you can see, it's a bit longer and a bit taller than what you would normally have it, but it is fairly sort of simple. So how this works is pretty much the exact same way. I've had to actually add in a repeater here. Now, that's mainly because you don't actually get a full signal strength just by walking around with the Sculk sensor. The problem being with that is obviously you're going to add a slight amount of delay with the repeater. But aside from that, all that you've got is the basic same sort of system. You'd hide this hopefully behind a wall. The further away your walls are, the more you're going to have to basically extend it on and on, and the slower the system becomes. So that's a little bit of a downside that I haven't sort of thought of a way around it yet, but yeah, it is what it is at the moment. So along here, all that we've got is basically the same sort of thing. Now, I've changed it over here as well, so everything sort of fits underneath your floor, which should be fairly sort of a bit more practical, to be honest. So we've just basically got some slime blocks here, and all that's going to happen is, again, they're going to push it back and forward, and they're just going to control it. Now, this system on the side here does become a little bit more complicated as you add different directions in. So how this is working is same sort of deal. We basically are blocking it with the wool block from that piston. The only difference that you'll notice is that I've added one over here as well. So what you'd want to have is basically if you're walking along here, it will basically pick it up from either this side or that side. And if you wanted to make it so that it could pick it up even more from different sides, it would probably have a bit of an issue for anything that was picking up on movement from this side here, namely because it's hard to pick up on movements of walking while also trying to disregard the piston movements, which is, yeah, that would be a bit tricky. I mean, you'd still have that one and obviously that one over there that would pick up on you walking, which it works, you know, up to here. It's not too bad, it's not perfect, but as you can see, it would have some issues. That's the only thing. You'd probably have to have one all the way on the other side, actually. So you'd probably have to have a you'd have to have something like a Sculk sensor, probably, I'd say probably here, or actually more here, and then you would have wool, and then basically you would have nothing. So that's how you could do it, but it would be a bit of a faff around, and then you'd have to run a redstone line, obviously, over to that piston. But you could do it. You could do it from all four directions. It would just be that you'd have to try and make it into a position where it's not going to be picking up on that piston each time. So let's do a very quick build tutorial. Check the chat, and there's nothing in the chat so far, so that's okay. Makes my life a little bit easier. In fact, we won't go over there because that was basically one that I was goofing around with before. And let's build something on the fly here. So we might go over here. Hopefully I can remember my own designs, which would be nice. It'd be nice if I could remember how I actually build things one day. But, well, we may have to cheat a little bit in case I forget. So just bear that in mind. So let's start off. So it's pretty simple, actually. This is one of the builds that I do quite like a lot because it's something that is fairly sort of simple. So it's going to be something that's sort of accessible to most players without too much of an issue. The big thing I find with a lot of redstone builds is that they're not really accessible to a lot of people, mainly because they can get fairly sort of complicated. So if I can find the magma cube, obviously. The other thing is, obviously, there is some issues between Bedrock and Java and how things work, which, yeah, I prefer to make things that work in both versions, to be honest, because it's going to be a lot simpler to actually make one video that has something that works in both. It's my dream one day to have both versions exactly the same, but yeah, that would be something quite difficult to make, I think, honestly, but yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream. You know, all players being together, all the community being together in one game would be good, but yeah, you wouldn't be able to make everyone happy. But let's make the second platform up here, and let's go along here a little bit. Let's make it a little bit of a long walkway so that you guys can get a bit of an idea as to how this all works. I have not done one of these live streams in some time, so you got to forgive me a little bit if I'm a bit rusty. So I'm really not used to making these live streams still, but you know, it's something different. Let's make this out of... Actually, we'll do it out of glass. I was thinking fence posts, but we'll make it out of glass. Make it look a bit more... sort of modern. Let's go up here. So the main things that we're doing here is we're just going to be building ourselves a little bit of a water stream, and if... Come on. Really? It's really messing with me today. It's the one sort of issue that I do have is placing glass panes on top of each other always seems like such a pain in the neck some days. Like, have you ever noticed that the glass panes are... They seem to do what they want sometimes. Like, you really got to click on top of the actual square that you get there. In Bedrock, you can sort of just cheat and just basically do that, and then it will just build up for you. But yeah, that's the only problem with Bedrock, is that you can become a bit lazy because it does do a lot of smart things. But yeah, you can become a bit lazy with it. So let's get this side on, and let's go down here for our next part of the wall. And as you can probably tell, what we're doing at the moment is we're basically just going up and along, and we're just going to make something to stop all the water coming out, of course. And just like that, and just the last side is all that we need. And something a little bit like that. Yep. That's right. Okay, so next thing that we'll do is I'm going to cheat a little bit with the water buckets, and we're just going to use some glass and go all the way up here. and like that, and then we're just going to basically make sure that all of them are source blocks, because if they're not, you won't get a water stream occurring. I did notice for you Bedrock guys that recently they did actually make the water stream somewhat similar to Java, where you used to be able to get away with just basically putting a bucket of water at the very top and letting it stream down, and then all of them would become water sources. It looks like they've probably removed that from what I saw last, so that's something to keep in mind. And if I've done this correctly, I should go to the... Okay, I'm not going up to the top. What? Really? How did I miss one? How did I miss one? Okay, let's try that again. There. And let's just go there. Is that better? Yes? No? Maybe? What? Okay, let's see where this is breaking. This is breaking somewhere. Always. Always. I can't just build something. I place one there. I don't understand. Okay, let's try one here. No? Let's try one here. There we go, there we go. Okay, now we've got something working. Okay, I missed one apparently, which, yeah, that's just my general incompetence. That happens all the time. I usually just edit it out of the videos, because it probably gets a bit tiresome after a while watching me constantly fail. So let's go on from here, and what we're going to do is probably just surround this a little bit with some glass, make it look a bit more trendy, all that sort of jazz. And we can just go out and along here like that, and yeah, no, I'll just leave it as it was. I think that probably looks a little bit better actually. So, next thing that we're going to need is our Sculk sensor, which is right there, and our redstone equipment, which very, very weird. We have a Gangnam... What is it? Gangnam Deep Ready, saying, can I make a tutorial on the two-way flying plane? On how to make a two-way flying plane. I probably could at some stage. I'll have to have a bit of a think about it, of how it's probably best to do, but yeah, I could probably look at something like that. That's always a good question. Always happy to answer questions, all that sort of jazz, all that stuff. But I'll finish this off to start off with anyway. So let's get this all up and rolling. So we're going to need some wool, of course. If I miss anything out, definitely let me go in the chat, guys. But I'll try and keep it fairly sort of simple. It's a fairly sort of simple build. You can sort of visually see where everything is actually going to be going. So it shouldn't be too bad. Last famous words. A lot of the time, unfortunately for me, but it shouldn't be too bad. It shouldn't be too bad. If you do have problems, let me know in the chat or in the messages and all that sort of stuff, and I'll definitely try to help as much as I can. But let's go into here. What I was going to say before was I do find it a bit sort of strange that the Sculk sensor does end up in redstone. I mean, it kind of is a redstone equipment, but it kind of feels, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know where you'd sort of put it. It's kind of like a plant, I guess. That's how I see it, at least. It's kind of like a plant thing. That's getting pretty technical in, as far as Minecraft terms go here. Yes, it's a type of plant thing that does stuff and things. Let's go down here and let's... I might change out block because that's not going to work too well with glass. So let's change that over for just iron. I always use iron too much, but you get the idea. It's fairly sort of simple stuff anyway. So let's go up like that, and then we can just grab ourselves an observer, which will be somewhere along here, like that. Face it upwards, get rid of that block. Now we get to do the fun part of the wall. So choose whatever favorite kind of wall that you want to go for. I'm going to go with the blackstone because they look pretty good and I haven't been able to use them very much since I've come out. So yeah, Where are they? Are they in decoration blocks? Yes, they're in decoration. Of course they are. Why not? Let's go up from here, and so we're just going to do the very center needs to be over the observer, as you can see, and as we go upwards like that, that's how high we want it. And now we need to do one on each side and all the way up to the top. So we get something that looks a little bit, if you give me a second. Whoop, 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 whoop. I've got to stop double tapping the spacebar button. It always makes me fall. There we go. Okay, so now you can kind of see how it works, and if I sit on this side and just place a block, you'll see that we get that notch. When it goes back, it disappears. And yeah, whenever you place and build blocks and things like that, that's where you have the problems. So if we go down here now, you'll realize that I've put these blocks on the absolute wrong side, and that was actually meant to go on this side here. So that will basically be that when that activates up there, it's going to push that one over, which means that it's going to pull you down. And when we walk around down here, that one is going to push over the soul sand, and it will allow us to go up, kind of like that. That was weird. It changed back. It doesn't usually change back. Hang on. That is weird. It seems to be picking up on some sort of sound. Let me just check that for a sec. Hang on. This is a bit odd. What is it picking up on? It must be picking up on the sound of me splashing, I'm guessing. Let's have a watch. Let's have a watch. So, for this to activate, I need to at least stand on one of these blocks here. Stand on one of these blocks here. Yep, there we go. And let's see. Yeah, basically it's activating whenever I get to the top. So that's fairly fine. That's not really a big deal. And as you can see, there we go. So basically we have ourselves our own little, very, very simple water stream that basically just lets us swap over the blocks without having to press any sort of buttons or anything like that. So yeah, I hope you guys had a bit of fun. It was a pretty short stream, unfortunately. I was planning for it to go for a bit longer, but you know what? If you learned something in today's episode, then hey, all good with that. But yeah, let me know what you think of this build. I think it's kind of cool. It's something very, very basic that works in both versions. Hopefully works in both versions. That add the disclaimer down the bottom that while this should work in both versions, it could be something that I've overlooked, or it could even be that the Sculk sensors work slightly differently in Bedrock. So if it is something wrong like that, let me know and I'll definitely try to fix it up in another video. But yeah, I'll again with Gangnam Deep ready. If I said that name right, I probably didn't. I probably butchered it absolutely terribly. But if yeah, I'll see if I can make some sort of a two-way flying machine video. In fact, I do believe that I should have a video on that. If you look up on my channel something like 4 strange flying machines, there's the ones at the very end that are particularly good and fairly simple. The one that sort of is a really laggy one, that's pretty useful. But until I see you guys in the next episode, hope you had fun, and I'll see you, of course, in the next one.